You play incense burn? So just every time I hear this song and the cascade of the keyboards come in and Panavati's voice starts to rain in. And I'm reminded in the depths of all that I am and who I am, how fortunate we are to have encountered a community of those that are working on awakening. How sweet the nectar of a teacher who constantly shows us what it is to be okay with looking at our own faults. How beautiful to be able to come back. You can hit it whenever you want, Procedure. Lucy is my guy. I know you're not supposed to say that, but he's my guy. She's like my spiritual teacher, my administrative assistant, my sister on this incredible path. So everybody come in.
Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas.
To the Buddha, we return and rely, vowing that all living beings profoundly understand the great way and bring forth the Bodhi mind.
Can you speak louder, please?
You want me to enunciate?
No, just louder.
Yeah, one time I saw an episode of Friends and Joey Tribbiano was doing a scene and they were asking him to enunciate and he just kept spitting on Christopher Walken. And he was like, so that's what this acting thing is? It's just enunciating? So I will try to speak louder. Sometimes when I'm trying to tap in, my voice gets a little bit lower. The last time that I gave a talk, I spoke to Venerable after I gave the talk and she told me, go back and watch it. Go back and see. And, you know, we talked about it and essentially what she told me was, you started the talk trying to find out what was wrong. And by the end of it, you were sitting in what was right, you know? And I think that's a lot of what we do with our life. So the theme, the expression, what I really want to share with everybody today is joy. You know, I feel like we've walked so long in the bondage of what's wrong with me, I'm not enough, blah, 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 blah. It gets to a point where it's just tired. And if we're going to really understand and study the Dharma, then we have to know we're studying the science of mind states. And in order to be able to enter into that science, we have to first be able to break down the solidity of who we are. So I guess it was around December, Panavati gave, she gave I guess a call for those of us that are sometimes enamored with conflict to read the chapter on confessions in the exalted sublime golden light. Now, one of the things I've been wrestling with lately is, you know, I have a 2-year-old. I work full time. Time for me is not like we just read this chapter on the emptiness of time, but it does not feel that way when you get home at 2 in the morning after working a shift where it's like, well, I work in a restaurant that's very like, and then you got to get up with a baby at like 7 in the morning. You know, that's so it's 5 hours of sleep, and I can't always do that. Do that. When I say do that, I mean get up and do my practice in the way I want. I don't have an hour and a half anymore to do it. And the beautiful thing about karma is that it allows us to work out that which we need to work out, right? And if we don't do it, we just keep cycling back around and around and around. So most of my life, I was pushing and looking for some big spiritual answer. And I came down here and I wound up having a family. And honestly, I realized I wasn't that prepared at all to have a family. Once you have a child, they don't tell you this, but once you have a child, basically what happens is you're tired, you're cranky, you have to figure out how to raise a life in conjunction with somebody who has a whole other operating system around how they want to raise a life. And without even thinking about it, or without even really being conscious of it, we slip into the patterns that we were raised with, you know? And so for me, like, honestly, when things got hard, my father like turned up the anxiety dial in his mind, and he really shifted from being a human being to a human doing. Now, when you're in the vibration of mind that thinks that everything has to do, everything has to get done, everything, and then you're projecting that upon your partner, it's just not going to be good, you know? So I was running into a lot of conflict with my wife, mostly because I'm working 8 hours, 9 hours, and then I come home and it looks like a bomb went off. And I like a 2 year is like a tornado. They can tear that apartment up in like 12.5 seconds. So we did a retreat last year, and the first thing that I had to come to contact with was, and this happened in the winter when we did that cold retreat. I realized it's not that the place is messy, it's that my mind can't be stable when everything outside is out of sorts. And I'm expecting my wife, who's working from home, answering calls while raising a 2-year-old, trying to take care of this life where we don't really have any help to have it all together. And if she doesn't, then what? I project my angst and my anxiety on her. And then you have an argument that lasts 7 days. You know, because that's what happens when we have a blowout like that. It's like, if we don't allow ourselves to stay stable in it, then it's an argument that goes on for days. And while that's happening, like, the child's in the field of that, you know? And I was struggling with that, rocking with that, pushing harder into my practices, trying to still the mind. But honestly, all the time kind of blocking out the wisdom, which really needed to be seen, which was, if you grew up in an environment that was not stable, and that seeded your mind in a way where you have a predisposition to anxiety, is pushing more really going to allow that to be unearthed? And sitting with that, you know, sometimes we have to like shipwreck ourselves and come to a place where we're like, the operating system the train that I'm on is chugging along and chugging along and chugging along, and it's just not working. And I'm dialing up the part of me that wants to be seen, whether it's with anger or angst or ill communication, and even that's not working. So it was hard. It was hard to sit with that. And, you know, like, the other thing is, like, my wife went through postpartum, you know, and I was raised in a family of you pull up your pants and get it done, you know. My wife was raised in a family where her mother died when she was young, and her father really made it his life's mission just to see his little girls. And so the wires were getting crossed in this place where my anxiety was like, we need everything to be perfect. And her headspace was like, dude, I'm trying to manage a little kid and working from home, and like my hormological wires are going in 58 different directions. And you're asked, one of the things Nancy actually said to me that honestly, this really helped me. She was like, no woman wants their husband to come home and have to justify what they've done all day, you know? So I really, like, honestly, I really had to slow down and learn to see where my wife was in the fact that she might be struggling, she might be help, she might need help, as opposed to just what I want to do in the space. And I realized I needed some help, you know? And sometimes help isn't always like doing more prayers or sitting in more meditation. You know, I had to go to therapy, and I had to kind of begin to learn and unpack what it is. Therapists have like they have their own framework of understanding, but one of the things they say is, you know, how we relate is based on our attachment to our primary caregivers. And if you grow up in a household where there's alcoholism and mental illness, like that stability that comes from really showing up in a loving, consistent way is compromised. It's almost like you're those Russian babushka dolls. You got one little doll, two little doll, miss this doll, another doll, miss this doll. So then when you put all the dolls together and you're trying to like move through life, it's clinking around in there and it's getting messy, you know? And it's taken me some time just to really unpack and realize what to me is the number one lesson of the Buddha Dharma: cause and effect. Anxiety, it's not just a thing to be prescribed with a pill. It is the result of a particular mind stream's reaction to external stimuli, you know? So I've been working on looking at all that, you know, and really getting real about the fact that um, there's a part of me that honestly wants to be seen, that felt like it wasn't seen, that felt like the instability of not being seen in the way that I wanted to, um, got pushed into one of those babushka dolls. And then when I would move through life and like change jobs or do different things, it's like the anxiety of wanting to be seen or wanting to be seen in a way where you're not making mistakes would be kind of humming and vibrating in the background. And when that's happening below, it's like an electric, like a breaker box that's, you ever hear a breaker box that's humming like, all the juice is going through the house, but something is off in the circuitry. And then when other things happen on the level, like you come home and there's, you know, an issue around the dishes not being done, if we're not aware that untapped trauma comes to the surface and really leads us to act unskillfully. And trying to sit on top of some spiritual mountain is not gonna solve, it's not gonna solve the issue. And we have to really sit in where we are. And right now, I'm in a place where I'm learning to set the tone for a loving family. And that's not to say that I didn't have love in my family. It's just like I had people that were wounded in love in my family, and their response was to to develop the tools that were necessary to survive. But I think there's a point where, and especially if we're studying Dharma, which part of it is the deepening into virtue, right? But what does virtue really mean? Like, anybody have any ideas? Like, if I ask somebody, what's virtue?
Kindness came to mind.
Generosity is one virtue.
Soma?
Virtue is everything.
Um,
She says everything is abiding by the precepts, for sure.
That undefended, spontaneous presence that, we don't normally have.
Yeah, that actually speaks very close and clear to the way that I'm seeing it. Because one of the things that happens is when I am in a place where I'm in a mind state or a mind frame of anxiety, there is the complete lack of an availability or an intimacy with another person. I mean, that's it right there, because the mind stream that we're in at that moment, it doesn't allow us to cross the divide and be there for other people, you know? And it's you're living in a house with somebody, and you're working at night and they're working during the day, and you have this little life you have to take care of. And it's like two ships passing through the night. And then you have micro arguments that build up and the resentments. And at some point you have to really say, like, hey, the system that we have in place is not working. And for me, that was really shedding the need for anyone else to fix my anxiety. And it's not like we consciously say that, but we do it. We do it how we throw our stuff on other people, don't we? You know? And I know, like, I started with saying this talk is about joy, because honestly, I'm working through all that, and I'm letting the binds of thinking that anything outside of myself is going to somehow solve everything. That doesn't mean we don't want other things, relationship with people to be cordial. It just means, like, we're not expecting their behavior to be what's going to actually find peace inside of us, you know? So my question for everybody is, like, what is joy, especially in the context of your own heart and your own family? Is it having everybody else act the way we want?
Hey,
Hey,
it's Giovanni. How's it going, man? I think for
I
me, like, what I'm kind of like really been sitting with and really coming to, and it's just accepting myself fully and completely. That's been a big thing that's just been going through and just finding those moments where I'm not, and just trying to shift that and really look at, how the practice can give me that clarity. That's it.
Bill,
What's that?
what's joy for you?
Joy for me, getting up at sunrise, without an alarm. Yeah. Really. I've had some disturbing, people come by my trailer because they, had, alcohol in them. And, I handled them different than I would have if I had been with them. And they didn't take quite the way they thought it would come out, but you make a stand, your space is your own. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm striving for that space. So if it's something new to you, if it's something old to you, it's old to me, but I got a decent night's sleep out of it, so and sunrise came, and it wasn't 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was truly grateful I got that much sleep. It had not come in quite a while. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is joy of born. Like for me, joy is being born from really understanding and accepting that I'm in the process of growing. And that, since I've been undertaking this, the gaps in, the gaps in the conflict and the confrontations between me and my wife are getting fewer and fewer and fewer, you know? And part of it is just honestly having a group of people that I'm around that show me that we can be more, that we can do more. I know we study all these deep and lofty things, but the real reality of it is like most of my life I've lived in conflict. And my response to conflict was to do more, to push harder, to point out when other people aren't pushing, to kind of to knuckle in under myself, and even deeper than that, to be like, one of those foam gloves at the ball game, like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. We want to insert ourselves into it so deeply, and I'm starting to understand that what the Dharma is really telling us is we got to learn to listen. We got to learn really to listen to somebody else when they're suffering without needing them to be anything else. And if we are in a mind state that we can't hold, like Panavati told us a while ago, that patience is not requiring anything, it's having the ability to effort to not add anything else to the moment. So it's like you come in and that person's in a bad mood, they want to push that off on you. Can you not add into it? Can you rest in a joy that's not born from what they're doing? And that's where the space of our practice actually comes in. Can we rest in a joy that is not born of what the other person is giving to us or doing, And then when we do that, I think we can start to really look at ourselves. And so the question I've really been asking myself deep lately is, what does it look like for me to let go of my constant arguing with reality and allow a joy to arise? What does it look like for me to be happy with where I'm at in my life? What does it look like for me to allow my son to lead the dance? This is one thing a 2-year-old teaches you really well. Everything you tell them, they say no. So you have to figure out like this wild chess game of how to get them to do things, So I've been going to the library with my son, and if I tell him he wants to play with trucks, he doesn't play with trucks. So I got to sit down and color with him, like we've been doing a Dharma penguin. And I'll be honest, I'm not a good colorer. I'm just learning to color in the lines now. But what I'm learning is like, if I'm sitting there like, Dale, we got to do this or don't do that. He doesn't do any of that. So I got to kind of sit in the listening and allow him to come and just do what he wants, And that is these small gifts of surrender, right? Like page 1 in Imparting, that's a book that we've been studying. Basically, it says that in order to really be able to receive these teachings and go deeper, the prerequisite is continually giving up ourselves for other people. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, but I'm seeing that with my son, Like, can I give up what I want to do for him? Like when the storm happened, a tree fell on our property and the root ball is like 6 foot by 6 feet. It weighs over 4,000 pounds. No one can take it away. I had to have this like farm boy come and roll it down the hill with a excavator, which was a serious piece of work. And I'm trying to take all of the dirt out of it to fill the hole. I'm like, I want to go outside and do that. My son doesn't want to do that. He wants to play in the flowers. I gotta get this root ball. So then I'm like, okay, we'll play in the flowers. And not just in in like an angsting way, and I just release and let that go. And that's my cultivation. It's not some huge big thing. It's realizing how often what I want gets in the way. And how my human like Brian was talking about this, that notion of human doing. It's real, I think it's really incessant in people that are wired in a way where they survival mechanics, whether conscious or unconscious, are running the show. And when we think we're only validated in doing, there's no space for being. Children aren't, they show you very fast. They're not into how what you're doing. They're into how you're being around them. And they're paying attention with everything. My son keeps jumping like on my downtown area. And I was telling him like, hey, Teo, you can't jump on the downtown area. And he's like, well, then I'll climb on it. And I'm like, it's not a jungle gym either. And so now he's running around the house going, the jungle gym. So everything that we say, they're paying attention, right? And that's that. I honestly put off one of the big problems in my relationship with my wife is that I put off and I put off and kind of pretended that I didn't hear her constant requests to want to have a child. And if I'm honest with you, I think it was just because I was scared. Because some part of me knew that I didn't have the tools to do that. You know? But I'm learning to. I'm honestly, I'm learning to listen deeply. Like when I get my son up in the morning, I put on, like he's a slow waker. He likes to get up a little bit slower than I do. So I put him in the chair with me and I have to let him like snuggle for 20 minutes, even though I'm like, we need to be making pancakes, we need to be doing all that. Releasing the self. I throw in my ear pods and listen to Lucy to do the King of Prayers. So and sometimes that's my practice, but like there is this slow surrender where I'm learning how to be there. I'm learning how to be there with my son in a way that's not requiring anything else of the moment. You know, I'm not telling him what to do. I'm not showing him what to do. I'm just kind of learning to be there with him. And in some weird way, it's helping wipe away the crust underneath of myself that wanted to be seen, you know? And I realize that like that self that wants to rise and wants to be seen, it can be a prison, but sometimes we can't just release that up here. We gotta like clean the root that's going on down here, you know? I didn't prepare at all for this talk, to be honest. Madhavati asked me Thursday at like 4 o'clock. I was going into work, you know, and I work till like 1 o'clock every morning, and then I get Teo up at 8. And I was thinking about it, you know, like what do I really want to communicate? What is really important? What insights are arising? And I think a lot of it is what Santi said. It's the authenticity of being at a place where we're okay with who we are and where we are. And we don't have to be afraid of that. That's a joyful place to be, right? That's an extremely joyful place to be. I don't have to sit up here. I honestly could have researched all these highfalutin dharma things, but it's not where my life is right now. My life is learning to abide in a place of love without conflict within the confines of my house. It's learning to, like my son has this thing where He doesn't want me to change him. He only wants my wife to change him. Now, when you're trying to change a 2-year-old that's flopping and flailing and throwing poo on you and kicking you, and you have to stay centered in love in that, that's a lot of cultivation right there. It really, really is. I'm learning that sometimes there are times where I have to discipline him, but after I put him in a timeout or we talk about it, I have to let that go. And actually, he's showing me just as much about that as I'm showing him. I'm learning that trying to think that I have some long and laundry list of dharmic practices that are going to kind of take me to the other shore is not the way to hold that at all. Doesn't mean we don't refresh our mind in the waters of these things. It just means we don't hold it that way, you know? In short, I think I'm just learning to be okay with who I am, you know? That's what he said. Well, well, because it is, you know, and then also one step beyond that is to actually find I'll be honest, I had a contentious relationship sometimes with my meetings with Panavati over the course of like 7 years. And mostly it's just because I didn't have the capacity to hear someone pointing out what needed to be restructured in me without getting annoyed. Because the part of me that wanted to be seen in a particular way was too fragile to hear that. But that's not, you know, like if you want to get better at something and you're sitting at the feet of the master, you can't be annoyed every time they show you something that needs to be polished. You won't get very far. You know, you won't get very far at all.
There are a couple of things that
Yeah.
you've said that have just resonated really nicely.
What hit? I mean, I'd love to hear about it. This is more of a, rather than like a sit up here and pontificate, it's more check in with the fact that I'm learning to hold joy for the process of life.
Well, you were online when Sante was talking, and one of your comments was about digesting.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just a good thing, because you said you can't hold the Dharma like that, but you have to do it until it becomes authentically yours within you. You've digested it. It will naturally arise because it is already part of your being, not your doing.
Right.
And and I loved that analogy. And you started this with witnessing. And, you know, I saw something once about why do people get married? And, oh, it's for love, and it's for this, and it's to have a partner. No, it's to be witnessed that your life matters. That there's someone who will be with you, whether you're good or whether you're bad, whether you're and as you're changing. And I don't know whether it's not that simple, I'm sure, but the thing to witness without differentiation, without judgment of others, we are others. And Panyawati talks about the joy of seeing something she wants to correct in herself. Oh, good. Now I can get that off. If I hadn't seen it, I just keep doing it.
And honestly, what I'm finding is that the relationship with me and my wife, even though we're going through these challenges and sometimes we have spats, because let's be real, like you got a 2-year-old, she's working from home, you're working, 2 ships passing, like sometimes there's going to be drama. I'm not an enlightened being yet, but what I'm finding is, first of all, my wife's gotten tougher, which I think she needed to do. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I can argue until the cows come home. And that's not happy. So now she checks me, which I needed. 2, on the other side of that, we're really finding these deep moments of workshopping what it is to raise a life. You know, and that's like, my sister told me, she was like, you know, my sister had a friend who was like 60, and when my sister first got married, she was like, my sister was like, I'm so in love, and Lynn was like, honey, I don't even know what love is. Like, talk to me in 40 years and 4 kids. And now my sister's at like 30 years and 4 kids. And she was like, yeah, I'm just learning. Because love is surrendering the self and deciding we're going to live into higher qualities that aren't based on some fixed version of who we are. There are things that arise spontaneously in relation to that. And to the extent of which we want things to be our way, we block that. Teo listens to, we have the Dharma CD. He likes to take all of the pillows and throw them off the couch. And he runs back and forth screaming, no more blocking out the wisdom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? So it's, and I've had to learn to just be okay with the fact that things are going to be a mess. And at the end of the night, I'll pick them up. And my wife, because she knows that, dude, I get anxious if things aren't like that. She's learned to straighten up more. She is very understanding of how the languaging that you use with a child seeds their inner talk. So we're constantly having to workshop that. But I'm like, instead of telling me 40 things in the moment and sitting me over me, let's have a chat at the end of the night. Will you give me 1 or 2 things I can work on? And I'll tell you whether or not I agree with them, because sometimes I might not agree with all of them. But like sitting over me like an alien is not going to help me, you know? And another thing I wanted to say is to come back to this thing, like, yeah, my prayer my deep and heartfelt prayer for this year is to find joy in my heart. To realize like that I'm not living in a house anymore with somebody that's mentally ill, or somebody who has anger and was abandoned on a doorstep and never learned how to deal with their anger. So sometimes would titanically go on destructive rages. Like, I'm not there anymore. So I don't have to approach the life with my son like that. Now that's an intellectual understanding of that. The real experiential understanding is learning to shift my mind. And that's why, like, I can't even, there really are no words. There are no words. There's not enough merit in my heart. There's not enough plea for me to really communicate how grateful I am to this community. Like, I've been living down here for 4 years now, and if you really think about it, like, that's high school, right?
Yeah.
And we go to high school, what do we really know? We get into some drama, have some bad relationships, get expelled a few times, do bad things behind high school, like, but in the end, they give us a diploma, like, and I feel like I came to Panamani, like, well, I don't wanna know, I gotta know, and now I'm like realizing, okay, I'm graduating from high school. And all that trouble and that, and the fruit of doing all the work that we've done is finally being at a place where I'm mature enough in myself to understand that I have to listen deeper. And to be okay listening deeper, you know? I was online and we were in the Dharma study, and you know, I can say a lot of stuff intellectual that sounds good, you know what I mean? So you guys were talking and I was muted. I was like, hey. Soma was out in the other room. All of a sudden I get pinged. I'm like, oh great, it's Busita. They're gonna click me in. It's Soma being like, that is not being heard felt. I felt like I got caught with my hand in a cookie jar. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, wow, there's this part of us that wants to be seen all the time, that thinks that if others know that we know something, it's actually gonna change anything. That's not what it is. It's listening deeply enough into the space to understand, hey, do I need to shift my mind right now? Is what I'm adding really necessary? And someone was always working with me on that, you know? I know I'm like one of the kids you had in your school. But I'm listening, I'm learning to listen deeper, you know, and I'm finding a joy that just, that like, honestly, there's no place else I really want to be right now. And even though predominantly how I had used my spiritual practice was thinking that if somehow I fortify myself through all these things, I'll arrive to a place where I'll have tricked the universe, or you know, enough crackerjacks in the box to get a job that will finally validate me. And I'm finally realizing, like, none of that's really gonna matter, because it's all subject to change and impermanence. It's all just learning how to refine my conduct, my virtue, my listening, you know? So right now the mission is just to find joy in my family. Go ahead, Somi, you have something to say?
I do.
Go ahead. I'm listening deeply.
30 minutes ago, you asked the question of what is virtue?
Mhm.
And I responded, everything. Because I don't think there's a true definition. We can pull one out of a book. We can hear dharma talks on it, with definitions. But what you've just done in the last 30 minutes, to me, is virtue.
Mm. Mm. One of yeah, yeah. I think first of all, I think words, language, prajna, you know, that's just what we say, that in order to deepen into wisdom, you first have to understand the language that's used to access wisdom. And then you have to take that language and contemplate it deeply, so that that which is beyond the space in between the language can begin to emerge. And that's where things really happen. It's like there's the pigment in the can of paint and you see the color, but then it's the shaking that begins to allow something else to come. And then when it's painted, that's when the real experience happens. Something like that. But what I'm understanding virtue to be, first of all, I think your answer is really right, Soma. Virtue is the completed work, the totality of never unending qualities that are possessed by the mind of the universe and those great souls that have awakened to that mind. And that's why we do these practices, because to be able to try on all of those qualities at once, no way. It's like that box at work that every time I walk past, it's like, it would Tesla coil us, like. So we have to little by little work on lessening the self and perfecting into the quality that would be needed when we need it, you know. Like, honestly, I had another situation happen this week where the guy that lives in the house behind mine, I rent out a house behind mine, and that pays a good amount of my mortgage. And the guy that was living there, he was a Cuban refugee named Aniet, an incredible human being. And he told me about his life and stuff and the things that he had been through just to get here. I mean, you can't even imagine, you know? And he worked himself up to being an electrical engineer for like this billion-dollar company, you know? And as I was leaving to go to work yesterday, he's like, "Hey, I gotta talk to him." I'm like, "What's up, Aniet?" He's like, "I'm leaving in 5 minutes." I'm like, they sent him someplace else. Now, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen with the contract. I don't know if I'm gonna have money. I'm gonna have to figure all that out. And you know what? In that moment, I was like, something else arose. Like, normally, all that survival mechanism stuff would have clicked in, the overthinking, I took my mind in that moment. I placed it right there. There's a line in the John O'Donohue poem where he says, May I shelter the tent of my thought on the quiet place of my breath early in the morning." I might be getting that wrong, but it's something like that. So just at that moment, I put it right on where the breath. And then I could see that part wanting to crescendo. And I was like, nah, I'm good, bro. I'm chilling. And then I kept it hot. Now, I still have to deal with all those problems. You know what I mean? I don't know if they're gonna pay me. I can't get into obviously a logistic thing with $1 billion company. I'm gonna try to work it out. But what I'm not gonna do is spend 4 days hamster wheeling in my mind about it. You know, and that's the power. That's where the Dharma comes in, because you realize every time you're able to bring back and rest in a place that is not so affected by the sense gates, you have access to something else. Like Panavati was talking about, once you enter into the first jhana, accompanied by piti, which is sort of like when you concentrate the mind enough where the bliss and joy starts bubbling, it erases out all sorrow. And it reminded me of that Khalil Gibran poem where he said, the deeper the cup of your sorrow, the more the vessel for your joy. But it's not some intellectual thing. It's basically the Dharma saying, hey, this is a science of mind states. And as long as you're sitting in this one, you are not going to be able to abide in the other one. But the kicker is we have to have the fulcrum, like on the ceasing, to be able to stop it when it arises. And that's why we practice this listening. So I'm gonna ask this question again, and I want everyone to really think about it. What is it inside of us right now? What conflictual thing, for some of us maybe it's none, for others maybe it's a ton, that's actually preventing joy from arising? What checklist do we think we need? What outdated way of being? What validation? What hiding behind being not being seen or exposed for not having it all together? This is actually the real beauty and joy in Sangha, is that they see you. They see your hurt. They see your deep wounds. They see your ability to show up and help paint and do all these beautiful things. They see the fact that you're always there to help everybody anytime that they need. They see that sometimes, even though you're a nun, you're still struggling. They see that death, sickness, old age are coming for us all. They see that letting go of the identity of being a mom is really tough sometimes. They see that you're struggling on the path to be a father because you yourself grew up in a family that didn't have exemplary role models, and they know that there's a capacity in you to be who you want to be, and they're rooting for you and they're cheering for you. When your trailer is burned down, they show up to help you clean it out. When your teacher is suffering because she's having health problems, they step into the Dharma seat and with everything they are, share this beautiful gift and profound journey that we've been on. They hold this beautiful Dharma cat on their lap while we sing prayers, and I watch the ears of that cat rejoice. They show us that movement is another access point to the mystery that lies beyond. They show us that structure gives rise to behavior. They make peanut butter and jellies for your son. You know, like my son, he has the peanut butter and jelly 5, Reba, the bakery crew, mommy, daddy, Elsie, you know? Like, this is what real friendship is. It's not, doing tequila shots at the Boom in Cancun. You know, it's really being able to be there for the landscapes of our life. And that's why this joy is arising in me. And it's not like I don't have my times where the seasons of sadness come in, but overall, I feel like I'm on the conveyor belt, deepening into virtue. And I'm working on just listening. Like right now, my quote unquote sitting dharma practice is just reading this one chapter on confession. Basically, when it's the book, for those that don't know, the Buddha is giving a sermon. Now the Buddha is this completely perfected, awakened being. And it's hard for us to understand this because we live in a normal mind, but I think when the Buddhas give transmissions, sometimes it's just the light and sound that come out. And so the sutras just essentially the confessions of a great holy being who's aspiring to be a Buddha. And as I read it, I'm envisioning myself totally surrendering to that stream of wisdom and letting it wash every impurity in me away. And feeling that I am supported by the entire continent of the Sangha, to those that have already achieved great things, to those that are on their way to achieving great things. And I'm listening deep into that. I'm not doing anything or trying to figure anything out. I'm just studying the art of surrender. Sometimes I'm doing it on my way to work with the ear pods in. Sometimes I'm doing it in my bed. Sometimes I'm just doing one verse and saying it over and over. But there's a joy from just spending time in the goodness that naturally and spontaneously arises from being with fellow practitioners. I came home the other day or whatever, and I found, don't bend as well as I used to. That happens when you hit your 40s too. I found this paint thing, you know? My son was painting it, my wife bought him an easel. And I said, what are you doing, Tay Tay? And he said, I'm painting. And he pointed to this part here, and I said, what's that? He said, Padavati's heart.
Oh.
I said, what's that, Tay Tay? And he said, Santi heart.
Oh.
And I said, what that? Oh, Soma's heart. And what's this, Tay Tay? Daddy's heart. And I said, and he went through the whole song. And I said, what about the one that goes around? And he said, Tay Tay's heart.
Oh.
So I was like, whew. So one of the things that Panavati has me, pondering is she's basically saying, you know, Rob, sometimes we're so centered on ourselves and the path for our own development and our own. She's like, maybe you moved to North Carolina just so that you could be a bridge for the understanding that is growing in Teo. Who knows? Maybe so, maybe not, right? But it's definitely a way to get outside of the self-centered way of seeing things, you know? And back to the joy of the joy of the Sangha, you know? It's beautiful when Brian comes in and provides us with an intellectual insight that's far beyond what my mind can think of, you know? And so I started by saying that Panavati told me that that I started the last talk looking for what was wrong and eventually finding what was right. And my message to you is rejoice in seeing what has to be refined. Not as us, not because they're things about you or I or us. They're just qualities. You know, the distance between thinking I'm a wretch versus like, hey, there's an impatience issue that you got to deal with. That's a very different orientation. And to the extent that we are living with our undigested pain and trauma, and we don't have the ability to listen, hold, and make space to that, that will be the extent to which we're stuck and project that upon other people. I work, you know, there's a guy at work who like, I work in a very high-end restaurant, you know, and there's a guy at work who like, he's a good dude. They gave me this woman to train last night, you know, when you train somebody there, it's like you have to train them in the technical proficiency. You got to train them in the ethos, which is basically saying, I'm going to buy into the Kool-Aid that says when someone comes into the space, we're going to charm the pants off them. Like the name of the restaurant is Luminosa, Latin feminine, meaning that which is full of light. So that's the guiding principle, to illuminate an incredible experience in terms of food, cuisine, hospitality, the fingerprint of the space itself, and the ability for the company of people to enjoy the space. Now, I'm indoctrinating this woman, you know what I mean? Incalculating her, if you will, into all this on the behalf of my manager. And every time I'm doing it, this guy's coming in and inserting himself into the situation when he has nothing to do with it, you know? I can see the seeds of conflict that are already rising me starting to. And then I was able, honestly, to be like, okay, he just wants to be seen. And I let it go. Then he did it like 5 more times. And I let it go. And he did it 5 more times. Now, there's a point in my life where I would have street checked him, if you know what I mean. Like, but that's not who I want to be anymore, you know? And I'm really happy. Like, honestly, I'm happy with my job. Like my boss is so much of our life has to do with the energy of the people that we're surrounded with. And my boss she's rock and roll with a little bit of country. Like she definitely sits and stands in virtue. Like I told her, I'm going on a retreat in at the end of April, and I'm going away for 12 days. And I told her what I was doing, and her response was like, deepen into yourself. Come back refreshed. You know what I mean? And like to be in a place where they understand that you need space and time to develop yourself. It's the first time in my life. Usually they're just telling you what to do is wrong. And the reason I bring this up is like, it's not that anything is different, it's that I'm working on my karma. And when we do, we seed different situations. We don't force it, we just keep planting different seeds. We don't know what's going to sprout. But that's what acting with virtue is. And rejoicing in the fact when we see our self acting in a way that isn't that. Just going up to my wife like, hey, you know what? I cranked you out last night. You woke me up. I was tired. I got cranky. It was like 10:30 at night. I wanted the baby to be asleep. Like, you know, instead of being like, hey, it's not normal for a baby to be up at 10:30. Blah, blah. It's a very different expression, right? But it's like those small moments where we're able to see our communication from a place of peace versus conflict, it leads to a very different life. This is where we really see who we are. This is why another reason we're extremely blessed is because our teacher is constantly telling us practice is not just when you're sitting down. That's a peaceful abiding. Practice is when the guy is telling you, hey, did you tell her that was seat 1? Oh, we gotta do this. And you're like, and you have to be like, okay, that's not my aspiration. You know? So I was honestly gonna read the sutra to get myself into a state of surrender, but I want to end by saying that this Dharma is good. When I say this Dharma, I mean the universal teachings of an awakening through lessening our attachment to self, the model of that which is the pure conduct of the Buddha, and the community of practitioners that I call my friends, my good friends, those who show me what is hard to see. You know, are you able to play a song off the internet for me?
Yeah.
It's called Two Oceans by Trevor Hall. my prayer for the Sangha this year is that we deepen into joy, knowing that we are on the process, that we support each other in our virtue, that it's okay when one of us is struggling and we can be real with the others, that we are constantly in the Santi mirror of authenticity. You know, where we're looking inside of ourselves in a situation and really seeing, like, is what I'm thinking true? Is what I'm saying useful? And I think it's joy ultimately that calms the waters on the inside. Not pushing. It's not pushing. It's not thinking my family's gonna be something other than they are. It's saying, okay, I got this other family, Tay, my wife. Let's do cool things. Okay, I gotta listen to my wife talk about delphiniums. Like, you know, like I got, Teo wants to pull all of the laundry out of my dresser and use it as a garbage can. Okay, I'll pick it up at the end of the night.
Swimming into oceans, all that emotion, drowning to survive. The tides inside my mind, my hands are reaching out. How can I speak about, waves crashing on my body? I shiver from that cold, cold world, that old world. You'll never survive if you don't try to calm the waters on the inside. On the inside, you're the moonlight. On the outside, gotta hold tight. Then you walk on water. 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 Balance, I'm challenged. I try to shift the currents of my mind. Oh, don't suffer with the times. Don't settle for this cruel, cruel world, this old world. You'll never survive if you don't try to calm the waters on the inside. On the inside, you're the moonlight. On the outside, gotta hold tight. Let the storm pass. Then you walk on water. Then you walk on water. Then you walk on water. Then you walk upon the water. Then you walk on 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 water.
Rob's heart, Soma's heart, Nancy's heart, Elsie's heart, Bill's heart, Reba's heart, Panadeepa's heart, Kay's heart, Panavati's heart, Ananda's heart. Everybody whose name I don't know and still is inside my heart. You know, this is what a sangha is. It's one heart of awakening. And it's all these different beautiful colors and causes and conditions coming together for the great purpose of supporting each other. And my deep prayer is that we find the strength to calm the waters on the inside. And when we do, we'll walk on water. Anybody want to offer merit?
Before we offer merit, I want to just thank you. The spiritual path of raising a child is, you demonstrated so well, you and your wife together. It's just heartening to see. And it's both for Teo and yourself and your wife. It's that combined group that is it's just coming together. It's coming up. It's coming out. It's wonderful to watch. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel so, honestly, I feel so blessed for my son, and I'm one of I feel so blessed, that he has a mother that is, like, honestly, I do all this spiritual stuff. My wife has, like, her patience is a kabillion times better than mine. She's an amazing woman. She has seen me through thick and thin. There'd be times where I'd have to go get my brother off of buildings and stuff, and like the depression of watching somebody you see's mind snap over and over again, sitting in a room crying by myself, and my wife would just kind of come in quietly and hold my hand, you know. And when my father got cancer, my wife was a cancer survivor herself. She kind of went out and took his hand, and she's like, "It's gonna be okay. I've been through this." And so in these times where life falls apart, you know, where we go through a quote unquote storm and we realize it's not as solid as we think it is, that's when we really need each other, you know, because it happens to us all. And so I'm deeply, deeply thankful for my wife. I'm deeply thankful for my son.
Yeah.
But his wisdom is mind blowing. He does stuff. I've been teaching him how to meditate, going like this. Me and my wife will be arguing. He'll come and be like, we'll get into a tiff. I'll be going out the door. He'll be like, "Daddy, come here." I go over. He takes his hand, puts it on my heart. He puts it on my wife's heart. She's looking this way, like, I ain't talking to him. I'm looking over her. He's like, "Daddy's heart, Mommy's heart, same heart." So he's teaching us too. You know what I mean? And then I'm, you know, I'm deeply, deeply grateful for the community of practitioners. It's not, we don't have kabillion people, but what we do have is a very dedicated, thoughtful, caring, self-reflective group that continues to deepen into themselves, shed layers, and be more comfortable in sharing. I actually feel like, I was thinking about it, like, it's not that we're practicing better, it's that we're being more real and allowing the places that need to be exposed, and that's actually giving us the space to grow. You know, so I'm very joyful, honestly. And that's my prayer this year, just to deepen into joy. You know? And that's my prayer for all of us, because it's one of the enlightenment factors. It's a boat that just I'm like Panavati now. I said the talk was over and I'm still going. Just 5 more minutes. I said I'd be done in 5 minutes. What I wanted to say was that joy is like it's a buoy that like raises the boat so that you don't get stuck it's so stuck in the mud of your own mind. Our minds can be a prison if we're in a bad place there. And that's what the dharma does. It says, "Oh, hey, do you remember when Panavati was talking and she said, part of what a spiritual community is you come into this thing and you're swimming in the ocean, you're going so hard, but you're taking in water and you're starting to drown, and all of a sudden, you know, Soma swims up next to you and she's like, rah, rah. You're like, ah, you're struggling, just let go. And she takes your hand and you let go for a second. And then the buoyancy just lifts you up. And may we continue to do that for each other. And may we realize the incredible fortune of encountering such profound teachings and a profound teacher. Our conduct, may we sing the excellent, breathtaking beauty of the Buddhas. May we dive into an ocean of infinite bliss. May our speech take on the translucent color of 1,000 rubies shining in the sun. You know, where we hold everyone in our heart. May you be peaceful and happy. May no harm come to you. And may you always be able to meet the inimitable vicissitudes of life with love and courage.